if you're new to this channel, please feel free to like and subscribe. Hit the bell notifications below so you don't miss anything.
Today I'm going to talk about construction and in particular 10 problems you face on a construction site. For the first problem would be the lack of skilled workers, and a lot of people don't realise within the construction industry that there is a lack of skilled workers, and more often than not we have to get additional people in from other countries just to come in because they have a specialist skill. And a lot of people mistake that development and construction, even though there's a lot of developers around, a lot of construction people and a lot of construction companies around, that there is a lack of skill in certain aspects of construction, and that needs to be addressed because it only creates problems. Someone who is a labourer can't work as a scaffolder or can't work with welding or hot works and things like that because they wouldn't have that right expertise or the right skills or the right qualifications for it. The number one would be the lack of skilled workers. The second would be the lack of communication, and this works within the team who is doing the construction, the build, the project management, the people who are suppliers, the clients. You have to keep communication between all of these people. People are project managers, the site supervisors, the labourers, the people who are the contractors, the principal contractors, the main contractors, people who are suppliers. You have to keep them informed so that they schedule everything. And that would be sometimes the lack of communication can also cause problems with deliveries. It can cause problems with you getting things on time. It can cause problems with not having the right equipment, and this all leads up to extra additional costs and extra time within your project. The third one would be unreliable subcontractors. Usually within construction, as the industry as a whole would rely on subcontractors. No one person can do a whole development by themselves unless they have a specialist knowledge in each and every aspect. Usually what happens is you get a main contractor who then contracts other things out to other people, and that usually is something like you have a main contractor who gets the contract, then he hires a scaffolding company, he hires a building and construction company, he might hire a separate roofing company, he might hire another company to do bricklaying. So that's how it works. You could have up to 10 different subcontractors within a contract. Obviously you can have more than that, but obviously depends on what you have within your contract or agreement. Unreliable contractors have faced a situation where we worked with a scaffold company and they would come, obviously they have their own clients as well because they are a separate business, and they would come and go as they please, and they would come once a week, maybe twice a week, and we said to them, we understand and we appreciate that you have your own customers, but we obviously need to push things forward. So sometimes when you don't have that communication between one subcontractor to another, then you will face the cost of having extra time added on top of your own development lead time, and that also might cost you in the long term. Number 4 would be scheduling, and this works in relation to making sure you speak to everyone. So this comes off the back of communication, and scheduling was making sure that you have all the right documentation, everyone's CSCS cards. It could mean make sure everyone's got their qualification checks, make sure everything has been abided through health and safety, that people are signing in, people have everything there and available to them. They have meeting requests, they have emails sent to them, they get up to date with text messages, they have other people's documented numbers for emergency calls, things like that. You need to make sure that everything is scheduled so that you have a plan. Usually when you start on a construction site, they will have a Gantt chart of the lead time and what is expected from the start of the time to the finish of the time. Obviously the person who's doing the project management and the person who's actually doing the scheduling would actually know from experience for how long it will take from start to finish on one project, and obviously factor in any lead time and additional time that is needed. Number 5 would be high insurance costs, and this is due to the fact in construction that anything can go wrong. You could get fire, you could have water damage, you could have scaffold falling, which health and safety will get involved in. You could have someone being injured, you could have a death or fatality in the actual site. I have known one company that I used to work for previously had a fatality in the site, and one person had actually died, and they had to then close down that company because of the documentation and the legal processes and everything that had to be factored in that. So it can obviously affect your insurance costs as well, especially if you've had a lot of issues in the past. Your insurance premium will be high. Number 6 will be changing the mind of the owners, and this comes at the back of if something does go wrong on the construction site, the owner can easily change their mind and say, I don't want to use you anymore, or I'd rather not it be done now, and maybe further down the line I'll do it in 1 or 2 years time. So they could use that as a line to try and get someone else to do the project for them. And that is another thing you need to consider when you're actually doing construction sites. If you have a lack of skilled workers, if you have a lack of communication, if you have unreliable subcontractors, then this can all lead up to the owner or the client changing their mind about if they want to use your services or if they want to use someone else's services. So this is another thing to take into consideration, because you have to have that relationship, a good relationship with the client or the owner of the development that you're going to do, and in order to be able to have a good working relationship with them. Number 7 would be available cash, and a lot of people think development and construction, there's a lot of money to be made in it, but you have a lot of skin in the game as well. So you have a lot of costs. A lot of people don't realize there will be cost of materials, there will be cost of labor, there will be cost of legal searches like drain searches, land searches, there will be cost of any planning permission to the council, there will be cost of any surveys that you need to do. So these are all costs that will add up from the budget that you have. So even if you get a development cost of £1 million, how much of that would actually be inside the materials, the labour? Most of that will be gone in that aspect of the cost of the actual build. So the available cash you have, say if something goes wrong, can be limited, and then you will not, basically your cash will be tied up in the project. If you don't have access to available cash, you're likely to need a floating fund to be able to get out of any issues that you have on your construction site. So anything that will cost you a lot of money, you need to have a fund separately to your development costs that will allow you to have available cash to rectify any problems that you might have. Number 8 would be document management. Usually this is difficult on a construction site because you have things like delivery notes, you will have timesheets, you will have people who come on site leaving plans as well, site plans. Site plans can go missing, so it's one of those things that you need to be able to manage documentation. You need to have the right kind of documentation in terms of health and safety, legal work on the construction site itself, so that people are aware. And you also need to have a system of managing your documentation, so you have to have a way of being able to take those documents of the delivery notes, manage it. If this is very difficult for you, I suggest probably getting an additional person if you're based solely on a construction site and you need an additional person to actually take on the back end of doing a desk work and doing an office job, to manage all of your paperwork for you. That might help you to be organized. Number 9 would be the blame game, and more often than not in a construction site you would get this. It could be one worker, or it could be a manager, or it could be a project manager who's often blaming one person and then blaming another person and not taking responsibility and accountability for mistakes and miscommunication. And usually within construction, there is a grey area from right and wrong, and the grey area is quite big in construction. You can't really blame more than one person. It could be a chain of command, or it could be a chain of people who a little bit have responsibility for everything that basically has happened. So you have to take that in as basically with a pinch of salt. It's something that will happen on a construction site. One person will blame another person, but you have to take it to a grey area, look at the facts and think, what can we do now? If there's something that has gone wrong, you have to say, what can we do now to rectify this? Number 10 would be regulatory changes. We had worked on one construction site and the owner had changed their mind, and this is due to one regulatory change of tax on the bedrooms and the number of bedrooms you have within a property. So on the development, initially we had an extra flat there, but because of the regulatory changes introduced in the last couple of months, he then decided not to put one of the flats there. So obviously he'd agreed a price, a contractual price beforehand. So in terms of the revenue making on that contract, it would be something like 1.3 million. But because that had been agreed beforehand, it wouldn't really change anything in terms of having a flat. But regulatory changes can affect many things in construction. It can affect the number of bedrooms or flats you build. It can affect the health and safety. It can affect how you manage your construction site. It can affect the laws and regulations of insurance. There's a lot of regulatory changes that either can come in or can't come in that will affect your building construction.
If you like this content, please subscribe, hit the bell notifications below this video, and if you have any questions, comment them below and I will personally answer them.